Howdy sports fans, you good. When you think of the best sci-fi games, what are the first things that pop into your head? Human augmentation? Maybe our extraterrestrial neighbours? How about distant worlds and alternate dimensions? It's such a broad genre that the list could go on for quite a bit, which really makes building a list of the best science fiction games a little difficult. With a multitude of different subgenres and dozens of games spanning each of those, there is just a lot to choose from. But we are professionals, so we scoured those alien planets and battled through hordes of murderbots to bring you these sci-fi games you should be playing. Bear in mind that we are only including one game per franchise. Also, try to remember just how many amazing sci-fi games have been released over the years. Choosing just 10 was near impossible. If you want to swap our picks out, that's totally fine. Before the list kicks off, if you could slap the like and smash the subscribe, we promise to sit Valve down and teach them how to count to 3. Okay Gabe, it's 1, then 2, then... No, not a random card spin-off game. Gabe, no, not VR, Gabe, stop it. 1, 2, 3. Number 10, Halo 2. Halo Combat Evolved was a revolutionary shooter that introduced players to an intergalactic war between humans and the Covenant. Halo 2 continued this conflict, keeping the Spartan 2 Commando, Master Chief, at the centre of the action. Rather than ally himself with faceless Marines who serve as fodder for the Covenant, Master Chief is joined by a Covenant elite that's been shamed for the human successes of Halo. The two round out a thoroughly enjoyable narrative that builds upon Halo's lore while retaining much of what players loved about the original. Halo 2 is a fast-paced shooter through and through, thriving not just on a fun story, but also a world-class multiplayer that people still rave about today. Whether battling against hordes of Covenant, throwing sticky grenades on the frantic grunts, or taking on a team of human-controlled Spartans, Halo 2 has given us plenty of great gaming memories. Halo 2 went on to spawn plenty of sequels and spin-offs, but it's hard to deny that this was the pinnacle of the series, and one of the best sci-fi games ever made. Take us back to our youth of hurtling around coagulation and grieving our friends with a needler. Those were the days. Number 9, Mass Effect 2. Try to play through the original Mass Effect and you might find yourself slogging through some antiquated gameplay to experience a pretty great story. In fact, you couldn't be blamed for watching cutscenes of the original Mass Effect and skipping to its sequel, the much more fluid and playable Mass Effect 2, though we know that the very first game still has its die-hard fans. Commander Shepard and the crew of the Normandy return in this successful sequel and are once again faced with a threat that seems bigger than all of them. When human colonies start vanishing across the galaxy, Shepard and his or her crew set out to uncover who is behind the mysterious disappearances. Oh yeah, but not before Shepard dies. How's that for a spanner in the works? Mass Effect 2 expands upon the gameplay concepts of the originals, tightening them up and changing them a bit for a more enjoyable experience. Laden with RPG elements, players choose Shepard's class, improve the commander's abilities, swap out weapons and armour, and decide which crew members join them on combat missions. While the gameplay is enjoyable, Mass Effect 2 features a story that shines and spans across multiple planetary systems. There's a lot to enjoy, so long as you take the time to explore the many facets of this sci-fi RPG. Many point to this as the pinnacle of its genre since the turn of the century, and they might have a point. Number 8, Starcraft 2. Though Starcraft 2 released in 3 separate campaigns, Wings of Liberty, Heart of the Swarm and Legacy of the Void, when combined together, the trio makes one action-packed, dramatic story. Picking up 4 years after the events of the Brood War expansion, all is not well in the universe. Sarah Kerrigan is still the Queen of Blades, overseeing the Zerg Swarm, Jim Raynor has turned on the Dominion and formed a band of revolutionaries, and the Protoss are, well, doing weird Protoss things. The trio of campaigns all have at least one thing in common: gameplay that is remarkably improved over the original StarCraft, and with a 12-year gap between the two games, that's to be expected. StarCraft 2 follows the same RTS setup but gives players control over more at one time, allowing them to mount massive attacks or set up a strong defense. New units, new locations and new hero characters provide a much bigger experience than the 1998 RTS. Blizzard's storytelling is at its peak for Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm, though the quality does taper off a little bit with Legacy of the Void. Regardless, StarCraft 2 is a consistent, dangerously addictive RTS that was well worth the wait. Number 7, Metroid Prime. In 1986, Nintendo introduced players to an initially faceless bounty hunter known as Samus. Over the next 16 years, Samus's adventures continued across the galaxy, with a bounty hunter taking on extraterrestrial threats of all shapes and sizes in a 2D setting. Come 2002, Samus finally went 3D in Metroid Prime, proving that old dogs certainly can learn new tricks. Not that she's a dog, we'd never say she's a dog, she's a queen. Metroid Prime sends Samus across the universe after a chance encounter with a cybernetic version of one of her greatest foes, Ridley. Exploring the Talon Overworld, the infamous bounty hunter discovers the existence of Metroid Prime, the catalyst of a threat that could spread across the galaxy and put every living thing at risk. Prime kicked off a continuation of the first Metroid games, making it the first game in over a decade to revisit the original story. Though it was such a remarked separation from the original series, the 3D element certainly worked and resulted in one of the best Metroid games to date. The Prime series was so revered that fans have been feverishly anticipating the 4th entry, which should arrive this century sometime, maybe. Don't hold your breath. Number 6, Deus Ex. More than 20 years ago, Ion Storm transported players to a future not too far from now, and created one of the best sci-fi games of all time in the process. The dystopian world of 2052 may be on our horizon, but it's unlikely to feature all the neat cyberpunk elements introduced in Deus Ex. As JC Denton of the United Nations Anti-Terrorist Coalition, players engage in gameplay that spans stealth action, role-playing and adventure. Enhance Denton with unique nanotech abilities to turn him into the agent needed to combat the force of the Triads, the Illuminati and Majestic 12. Future entries of Deus Ex, more specifically Human Revolution, may have more advanced gameplay and better visuals on their side, but the original Deus Ex is a classic, especially if you could just plug in 1 million mods. Deep and engaging gameplay works well with a fleshed out narrative full of conspiracies, deception, and even a trip to Area 51. Unfortunately, Deus Ex as a franchise is currently on ice after pretty poor sales of Mankind Divided, but you have 4 mostly great games to play while you wait for a 5th. Get going. Number 5, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. The Star Wars franchise has a complicated relationship with the gaming industry. On the one hand, it's led to some real duds like Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace and Star Wars Kinect. On the other, it's responsible for masterpiece RPGs like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. BioWare was in peak form when it produced Knights of the Old Republic, which somehow separates itself from the Skywalker timeline to tell a story that, dare I say, was more interesting. In fact, the Skywalker bloodline wasn't even a blip on the radar, as this RPG takes place 4,000 years before the Galactic Empire is even formed. Players jump into the shoes of the main character, whose morals are at the mercy of whoever is manning the controller. A battle between good and evil unravels both across the galaxy and within the protagonist. Which side wins is 100% up to you, as Knights of the Old Republic features a light/dark side of the Force morality meter. The more good you do, the more you'll align with the Jedi. Cut down too many and deceive those around you, and you may just succumb to the power of the Sith. Though they play a prominent role, Knights of the Old Republic is about more than just lightsabers and Force powers. It does a fantastic job of showing the diplomacy and inner workings of the Star Wars universe long before Senator Palpatine ever came into power. Who knows, maybe, one day we will see a 3rd game. Maybe. Probably not maybe though. Number 4, Doom, 1993. We're always warned never to tinker with things we don't understand. If we do, there's a chance we'll wind up opening a portal to hell and summoning a horde of ruthless powerful demons. Unlike in Doom, we won't have a rugged hero to save us. The original Doom wasn't the first FPS game, but it certainly helped revolutionise the genre. Today it's a simple but fun concept that really fuels the nostalgia train. When it first released, however, Doom was a technical marvel that provided hours of entertainment and bred years of controversy. It's one of few games from the very early 90s that aren't a shock to play today. Though Doom Guy can't look on a vertical plane, the gameplay is so very familiar and smooth. It's such a good experience that it's even been ported more than a dozen times, and even saw new content developed by one of the original creators, John Romero, in 2018. In fact, you can even play Doom within the most recent Doom game, Doom Eternal. Play this these days and you might be surprised by how well it holds up. Even though it can probably be played on like an electronic doorbell or something, I don't know, calculator, I don't know, tampons, who knows. Number 3, Half-Life 2. Whether you understand what happened to Gordon Freeman at the end of Half-Life or not, the sequel is a must-play. Heck, one could argue it's an essential FPS for any fan of the genre to sink their teeth into. Though Freeman may think he reversed the effects of the incident at the Black Mesa research facility, he returns to a world overrun by an entirely new threat. In Freeman's absence, the Combine have conquered Earth and placed it under its authoritarian rule. With humanity dwindling in numbers and the multi-dimensional Combine only further threatening life on Earth, Gordon finds himself caught up in a resistance against the oppressors. It might not be the sequel many were expecting after playing through Half-Life, but it is a phenomenal follow-up that expands upon the lore for a more immersive world with even more open elements and environments. The result is an FPS that players still talk about today. Freeman remains an unlikely hero, but holds his own against headcrabs, zombies, the Combine and other monstrosities that spilled over from across dimensions. Freeman's saga isn't over by the close of Half-Life 2, but Valve has left little to no hope for a conclusion to one of its most popular franchises. Alex was just a little treat. Number 2, System Shock 2. Not only did the existence of System Shock 2 give us games like Bioshock, Irrational Games' sci-fi horror FPS stands out on its own as a must-play classic. When System Shock 2 released, it did so to multiple Game of the Year awards and praise for truly defining the FPS RPG genre. After awakening in a cryotube, players find themselves aboard a desolate starship, surrounded by infected personnel. Taunted by an artificial intelligence hell-bent on driving you mad, you'll need to utilise everything at your disposal to survive the horrors aboard the Von Braun. Luckily, that includes an assortment of weapons, abilities, and telekinetic powers. That's always pretty sweet. System Shock 2 features elements of RPGs, allowing players to upgrade the character to be the formidable hero needed to survive such a perilous situation. On its surface, System Shock 2 looks like your standard action title, but there are elements that span multiple genres to help create a horror FPS that went down as a cult classic and is still massively influential to this day. We wouldn't have so many iconic games without this one. A remake of the first game is currently in development, so here's hoping a whole new generation of players experience this space madness soon. And number 1, Dead Space 2. In space, no one can hear you running for your life while a deformed monstrosity chases after you. I mean, it's not quite as catchy as the Alien one, but it'll do. Surely it'll fit on the poster. It won't be a great fit, but it'll fit. Dead Space 2 took the formula of its predecessor and cranked it up quite a bit. Everything is in abundance, from the variety of necromorphs to the tool at returning hero Isaac Clarke's disposal. When Clarke awakens on a civilian space station 3 years after the incident aboard the USG Ishimura, he learns that things are much worse than he could have ever imagined. Afflicted by the mysterious marker from the first game, Isaac battles both the organic threat and his own sanity. The necromorph may be the stars of the show, but their horrifying presence is amplified by the incredible sound design. Like its predecessor, Dead Space 2 doesn't have to work hard to terrify players. Even if a necromorph isn't barreling down on you, the sporadic hisses, clangs and other ambient noise will keep you on the edge of your seat. Everything about Dead Space 2 is an improvement over the original, which was no easy feat for Visceral Games to pull off, as they created one of the best sci-fi games of all time and the pinnacle of modern third-person action horror. Hey, EA, resurrect Visceral and make a 4th game. Dare ya? Go on, I dare ya. Go on, Dead Space 4, go on. And those were our picks for the best sci-fi games of all time. Do you think that we missed any out? Or do you think the order should have been different? What did you think of the list overall? Do you love us? Be sure to let us know down below in the comments down below. And thank you for watching.